It was like he was putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger.
Charlie Sheen's ex, Bree Olson, just dropped some shocking news, claiming she had unprotected sex with him without ever knowing his deadly secret. What really happened behind closed doors?
What do you want the world to know about the Charlie Sheen that you know?
He's a monster.
What if the person you trusted the most was hiding a life-threatening secret from you? That's exactly what Charlie Sheen's ex, Bree Olson, is revealing in a shocking tell-all. You won't believe what she discovered after living with the Hollywood star during his most infamous years. Carlos Irwin Estevez, known professionally as Charlie Sheen, is an American actor. He is known as a leading man in film and television. Over his 50-year career, he has received numerous accolades, including a Golden Globe Award, as well as nominations for 4 Primetime Emmy Awards. In 1994, he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Sheen has been an A-list star for more than 30 years, starring in classics like Wall Street, Platoon, and Major League. But it was the actor's off-screen relationships and antics that often took center stage. Sheen won a Golden Globe Award for his role on the hit show 2.5 Men. But in early 2011, around the time of his diagnosis, the series was put on hiatus after Sheen entered rehab following several days of heavy partying. In the weeks that followed, Sheen went on a public tirade against Chuck Lorre, the show's creator, and was barred from the set. He was fired shortly thereafter. People magazine reported at the time that a letter from the producers to Sheen's attorney said the actor engaged in dangerously self-destructive behavior and failed to continue with his rehabilitation program. Sheen made his TV comeback on FX's Anger Management in 2012. The show was canceled last year. Since then, Sheen has remained out of the spotlight. Along with his feud with Lorre, Sheen has had several tumultuous relationships, including 3 divorces with ex-wives Donna Peel, Denise Richards, and Brooke Mueller. Most recently, Sheen was engaged to adult film star Brett Rossi, but the two broke it off late last year. Rossi wasn't the first adult actress Sheen publicly dated. After his split with Mueller, the actor was living with his goddess, as he called them, including actress Bree Olson. In the 1990s, he was also linked to other adult stars. On March 1st, 2011, Sheen was concurrently living with 24-year-old pornographic actress Bree Olson and 24-year-old model and graphic designer Natalie Kenley, whom he collectively nicknamed his goddesses. Olson left Sheen in April 2011, and Kenley left in June 2011. In a January 2013 interview on Piers Morgan Tonight, Sheen stated that he was in a relationship with adult film actress and 2011 Penthouse magazine Pet of the Month, Georgia Jones. Then in February 2014, Sheen became engaged to former adult star Brett Rossi, who began going by her real name, Scottine. With a wedding planned for November 2014, the engagement was broken off in October with an announcement that the two had mutually decided to separate. Sheen stated, "I've decided that my children deserve my focus more than a relationship does right now."
A camera.
The kids are Sheen's 2-year-old twin sons, Max and Bob.
I still have tremendous fondness for Scotty, and I wish her all the best. When Charlie Sheen dropped the bombshell that he was HIV positive, it wasn't just Hollywood that was shaken.
To admit that I am in fact HIV positive, and I have to put a stop to this onslaught.
His closest relationships were thrown into chaos. But what does his announcement really mean for those around him? The implications are staggering. On November 17, 2015, Sheen publicly revealed that he was HIV positive.
Absolutely, yeah.
How long have you known about this? When were you diagnosed?
Roughly 4 years ago.
Having been diagnosed roughly 4 years earlier. In an interview, he referred to the acronym HIV as 3 hard letters to absorb.
It's a hard 3 letters to absorb, you know? It's a turning point in one's life.
I'm here to admit that I am, in fact, HIV positive. On Tuesday morning, acclaimed Hollywood actor Charlie Sheen sat down for a candid interview with the Today Show's Matt Lauer and said he'd been living with HIV for 4 years. He said he felt compelled to come forward after enduring a barrage of attacks and subtruths in the tabloids and paying up to $10 million in shakedowns and extortion over his condition. In one instance, he claimed a prostitute took a photograph of his antiretroviral medications and blackmailed him.
Is it true that on at least one occasion you had a prostitute come over to your house who, after a sexual encounter, went into your bathroom and with a cell phone took an image of your antiretroviral medication?
That is correct, yeah.
And then threatened to sell that image to the tabloids?
Yes, this is after.
Lauer also asked Sheen, have you, since the time of your diagnosis, told every one of your sexual partners before you had a sexual encounter you were HIV positive?
Have you, since the time of your diagnosis, told every one of your sexual partners before you had a sexual encounter that you were HIV positive?
Yes, I have.
No exception.
No exception.
Yes, I have, Sheen replied, adding, no exceptions. The Golden Globe winning actor Charlie Sheen opened up about his diagnosis of HIV, saying he feels like he's carrying the torch for others battling the disease that causes AIDS. I feel like I'm carrying the torch, Sheen told ABC News' Michael Strahan in an interview that aired today on Good Morning America. For a lot of folks out there that are suffering from the same thing, the day I was diagnosed, I immediately wanted to eat a bullet, Sheen said. But my mom was there. I wouldn't do that in front of her or let her find me to clean up that mess.
The day I was diagnosed, I immediately wanted to eat a bullet, but my mom was there. I wouldn't do that in front of her or let her find me to clean up that mess.
But then something else came over me. They gave me a handful of pills and said, you can go home now and you're going to live, Sheen said.
But then something else came over me and they gave me a handful of pills and said, you can go home now and you're gonna live. If I was there with, brain cancer.
He said. Media and online reactions to actor Charlie Sheen's announcement that he is HIV positive show how far we have and haven't come in the past 3 decades. In 1985, movie star Rock Hudson became the first celebrity to go public about his HIV status. The medical progress since has been dramatic. A clearly ailing Hudson died of AIDS less than 3 months after he went public with his diagnosis at age 59. Sheen, healthy looking at 50, is taking life-saving antiretroviral drugs that came into use a decade after Hudson's death. As long as Sheen controls his virus with medication, he's likely to live a normal lifespan, his doctor said. But the screaming tabloid headlines and shaming tweets that accompanied Sheen's Today Show announcement are straight out of the 80s. We have medical achievements and epidemiological achievements, said Michael Luella, who coordinates the Community Advisory Board for Defeat HIV, an HIV cure research consortium based at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. That's a different world from 1985. But the people who are making Charlie Sheen jokes, they don't know this new world.
There's a few fun moments.
I mean, some of the most quoted moments of the
So
year
bizarre. It's so
came
bizarre.
out of that.
HIV stigma is still a problem. It's not really about Charlie Sheen at all. It's about all of us and how we think about HIV. It's still a boogeyman. Fred Hutch, experts, and others talk about Sheen's announcement, what has changed in the medical field regarding HIV, and what still needs to change to address both the virus itself and the stigma that surrounds many infected people. The biggest change is obvious. 30 years ago, with no treatment available, being infected with HIV meant almost certain progression to AIDS and an often speedy death. That is no longer the case for those who have access to, can tolerate, and regularly take antiretroviral therapy. And HIV-positive people who take their meds regularly also lower the chance of passing on the virus. Antiretroviral drugs can also be used by those at high risk of contracting HIV to prevent infection. When used in this way, they are known as PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis. But what about Sheen's statement to Today Show host Matt Lauer that it was impossible for him to infect others because his medication keeps his virus at undetectable levels?
Have you knowingly, or even perhaps unknowingly, transmitted the HIV virus to someone else since your diagnosis?
Impossible. Impossible.
We're going to talk to your doctor with you in a second
I look
about
forward to
that.
it. Good.
I wouldn't go that far, said Dr. Jim Kublin, an HIV researcher at Fred Hutch's and executive director of the Hutch-based HIV Vaccine Trials Network. Antiretroviral medication does keep viral loads low, leading to the slogan, treatment as prevention. That said, some risk remains, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that the only sure way to avoid spreading the virus to others is to practice protective behaviors such as using condoms, reducing numbers of sexual partners, and avoiding sharing needles and syringes. Sheen also said that because he is on medication, his virus is in remission. Is that the best way to describe it? Technically, no, according to Kublin. It isn't by any means in remission, which usually has the connotation that you're not taking any drugs or therapy to control the illness, Kublin said. The control of his infection requires daily medication. Without that daily medication, he would be at increased risk of progressing to more severe disease, and he would also be more likely to transmit it to others that he exposed. That said, should we be paying so much attention to people like Charlie Sheen, aware of his HIV status and taking medication to control the virus? A far bigger concern is the number of people who are unaware that they are infected, or aware but not in treatment. According to the CDC, more than 1.2 million people in the United States are living with HIV infection, and almost 13% of them are unaware of their infection. Only about 40% are under medical care, and just 30% have the HIV virus under control.
So a new CDC warning about the HIV and AIDS health crisis, the agency now considering it an epidemic. Here in Georgia, it's especially worse, some comparing it with a third world country.
Yet as deaths from HIV have dropped from the headlines, many Americans have been lulled into thinking the epidemic is over, at least in the United States. HIV hasn't gone away, said Kublin, nor, he added, has the urgency for a vaccine. What keeps people from being tested for and undergoing treatment for HIV? Although Sheen's diagnosis shows that anyone can be infected, he's not the typical face of HIV. Those hardest hit by HIV today are largely Black or Latino, poor, and often living in rural areas and in the South. Many of those affected may lack access to health care or distrust the healthcare system. They also may be discouraged from being tested by the persistent stigma, what defeat HIV's Luella calls the slut-shaming and self-righteousness seen in many online reactions to Sheen's announcement. Nobody deserves to have HIV, said Luella. Anybody can get HIV. It doesn't matter what your character is. You could be a really good person. You could be a really evil person. It's a virus. It doesn't have anything to do with evil or good. According to Luella, the furor surrounding Sheen's announcement will only make it harder for others to speak out about being HIV positive. Stuff like this makes me think, wow, even though we have tools to prevent HIV, we have treatments to keep it suppressed, we're working on a cure, we're working on a vaccine, there's hope everywhere. But we haven't touched the ugly ogre underneath, he said. What's even more surprising is what's now known as the Charlie Sheen effect. After his disclosure, there was an unprecedented spike in HIV-related Google searches in the United States. In just 3 weeks, the number of searches for HIV-related terms shot up by 2.75 million more than expected. But it didn't stop there. 1.25 million of those searches were directly linked to public health outcomes, covering topics like condom use, HIV symptoms, and testing. This wasn't just idle curiosity. there was real action behind the search numbers. A later study found that over-the-counter at-home HIV testing kits saw a staggering 95% increase after Sheen's announcement. Commentators noted that Sheen did more for HIV education in that moment than most public health campaigns ever do. The impact was so profound that the study's authors dubbed it the Charlie Sheen effect. Sheen, despite the controversies, took pride in his unintended but significant role. He publicly embraced the studies as part of his drive to raise awareness, stating he was humbled to have been of service to HIV prevention. What would you do if the person you trusted most with your life was hiding a deadly secret?
Living with him. We were sleeping together every single night.
And never said a word.
Never said anything.
And Bree,
ever. I'm clean, he told me.
Bree Olson, once Charlie Sheen's live-in girlfriend, is breaking her silence on the betrayal that left her shaken and furious.
Charlie Sheen's ex-girlfriend, Bree Olson, says she's furious with Sheen after his TV confession that he is HIV positive.
I'm here to admit that I am, in fact, HIV positive.
Charlie Sheen's ex-girlfriend, Bree Olson, is livid that the actor never told her about being HIV positive.
Inside Edition, Bree Olson says despite what he told Matt, the actor never disclosed to her his HIV status.
Extremely cute and petite blonde bombshell Bree Olson was born Rachel Marie Oberlin to a single mother on October 7, 1986 in Houston, Texas. Bree was an only child until she was 9. She has a younger half-sister. Her maternal grandmother was a Holocaust survivor from Ukraine. Bree had a pretty traumatic childhood filled with poverty and abuse. Her mother was schizophrenic, and her stepfather was very passive. She began lashing out. This landed her in a juvenile correction facility at the age of 11 and was incarcerated multiple times for a total of 3 years, remaining on parole until her 18th birthday. She got her GED and attended Purdue University as a pre-med biology major. But during her second year at college, she could no longer manage juggling working full-time as a telemarketer and school, and desperate for money, she decided to try porn. She began performing in hardcore X-rated porno fare in November 2006. She signed a 1-year contract with Adam and Eve Productions in 2007 and was Twisty's Treat of the Month for June 2007. Bree was Pet of the Month in March 2008 issue of Penthouse and graced the cover of March 2008 UK edition of Hustler. She's also been featured in such men's magazines as Club, Rockstar, and Barely Legal. She won an AVN Award for Best New Starlet in 2008 and went on to win a second AVN Award for Best New Web Starlet the following year, in which she also won the title of Miss Free Ones. Olson lived for a while with Charlie Sheen as one of his goddesses and retired from the adult entertainment industry in 2011 at age 25. The two dated 4 years ago. That's also when Sheen first learned of his diagnosis, which he revealed on the Today Show Tuesday morning. He admitted to Today co-host Matt Lauer that he's had unprotected sex with 2 partners since being diagnosed, but both of them reportedly knew about his condition ahead of time. He also added, without clarification, that they were under the care of my doctor.
Have you had unprotected sex on any occasion since your diagnosis?
Yes, but the 2 people that I did that with were under the care of my doctor, and they were completely warned ahead of time.
When asked if he had transmitted the disease to others, Sheen declared, "Impossible, impossible."
You knowingly, or even perhaps unknowingly, transmitted the HIV virus to someone else since your diagnosis?
Impossible. Impossible.
We're going to talk to your doctor with you in a second.
And insisted he had informed every sexual partner of his condition beforehand. Olson says that's bullshit. He never said anything to me, the 29-year-old, audibly shaken, said on Howard Stern's Sirius XM radio show. He doesn't even value my life. Well, Sheen's ex-girlfriend, the former porn star Bree Olson, begs to differ. If you recall, Olson was one of Sheen's 2 live-in girlfriends, along with Natalie Kenley, whom Sheen had met in a treatment program. Sheen labeled the women the goddesses, and they were by the 2.5 Men star's side during his highly publicized meltdown and anti-Semitic rant against the show's creator, Chuck Lorre. In an interview with the Daily Beast after their split, Olson claimed that she was miserable and waiting for it to end, and that she was the one which one day packed up her things and left Sheen's chaotic mansion. During his interview with Lauer, Sheen said he was diagnosed HIV positive back in 2011, on the heels of his public downward spiral, and while he was dating Olson. She says the two remained together for around 7 months. What would you do if you found out your partner had been hiding a potentially deadly secret the entire time you were together?
That's when I was with him. I was living with him. We were sleeping together every single night.
And never said a word.
Never said anything.
And Bree,
ever. I'm clean, he told me. I'm clean. And I made the same mistake that a lot of people do, you know. I trusted him.
Bree Olson reveals the truth about her relationship with Charlie Sheen that left her devastated. Olson, a former porn star, claims she and Sheen occasionally had unprotected sex during their roughly year-long relationship, which she ended in April 2011. She also alleges that Sheen insisted on using lambskin condoms, which do not protect against STDs such as HIV. Olson appeared on The Howard Stern Show following Sheen's Today Show reveal. According to Stern, she appeared shaking and upset as she entered the studio.
So upset.
Angry.
That I couldn't be more angry. I'm so shaking. I have been crying. That to think that someone could do that to me.
Asked when she learned Sheen had HIV, Olson replied, "Right along with everybody else. 3 days ago, I started getting calls. It was right when everything happened in Paris. Fox and everyone else started getting at me in emails, and even I wanted to blow it off thinking, it's just another Charlie thing," she said. "He never said anything to me," Olson added. "I was his girlfriend. I lived with him. We were together. We had sex almost every day for a year with lambskin condoms."
You know, we had sex every night.
For a full year.
For a full year.
Lambskin condoms, by the way, do not prevent the transmission of HIV. They only prevent pregnancy. Olson told Stern that while she preferred standard condoms, lambskin was Sheen's condom of choice. Olson, who had driven from her hometown in Indiana to New York for the sit-down interview with Stern.
Bree drove through the night from her home in Indiana, where she now lives, for this exclusive Inside Edition interview.
Brought in her HIV test, which she then presented to the radio host. Stern observed her HIV test and read, "No HIV antibodies were detected. I'm negative for HIV," said a relieved Olson.
I am HIV negative.
Before shacking up with Sheen, Olson was a prolific porn star, but she says she left the industry for Sheen and never returned.
I left the industry for him and I never went back.
Recently, she appeared in the horror film Human Centipede 3. When asked whether or not she feels betrayed, Olson paused. "I've not spoken to him in quite some time," she said. "I had spoken nothing but positive things about Charlie. I have never said anything negative. I've never torn him apart in any way, but I'm so upset. I couldn't be more angry. I'm shaking. I've been crying. To think that someone could do that to me. I loved him. He was my boyfriend."
Not spoken to him in quite some time. And as you know, Howard, I've even come on and done a radio interview with you since I had dated Charlie. I had spoke nothing but positive things about Charlie.
Yes.
I have never said a negative thing. I have never torn him apart in any way. But I am so upset.
Angry.
That I couldn't be more angry. I'm so shaking. I have been crying. That to think that someone could do that to me.
Were you in love with Charlie Sheen?
I loved him. Yes, he was
Yeah.
my boyfriend.
He just admitted right in that Today interview that the diagnosis is during the tiger blood time. "That's when I was with him," she continued. "I was living with him. We were sleeping together every night. He never said a thing, ever. I'm clean," he told me. I'm clean, because I didn't want to use lambskin. I wanted to use regular condoms. I trusted him."
He just admitted right in that interview that is the tiger blood time. That's when I was with him. I was living with him. We were sleeping together every single night.
And never said a word.
Never said anything.
And Bree,
ever.
you
I'm
even...
clean, he told me. I'm clean.
In his interview with Laura, Sheen described the side effects he faced living with HIV, including a series of debilitating cluster headaches and migraines, as well as night sweats.
He was sweating all the time. He would keep the house at ridiculously cold temperatures.
I remember that sweating, Olson said. He would wake up all the time in the middle of the night complaining of these symptoms, and he would blame it on steroids, these steroids he took. Indeed, during his Today chat, Sheen chalked up his tiger blood time to roid rage. A doctor came to the house all the time, and they'd go into a room by themselves, added Olson. He always told me, "This is for my steroids." While Sheen claimed that many women had shaken him down in the past, Olson was adamant that she's been an incredibly loyal ex. "I never went and sold any of my stories," she said, even claiming to have turned down a $200,000 offer for a sit-down interview following their split. "It's illegal," she said of Sheen's non-disclosure. Indeed, Sheen's home state of California makes it a felony punishable by up to 8 years in prison for a person with HIV to have unprotected sex with the intent to infect someone to whom they haven't disclosed their status. Also, California has a misdemeanor charge carrying up to 6 months in prison for willfully exposing others to HIV. When asked what sort of action she'll take, Olson said she wasn't sure. "I haven't even thought about anything, but all I know right now is now, because of him, every time someone hears my name, they think of HIV right next to it," she said, later adding, "He doesn't even value my life." While Olson is livid over his announcement, another of his exes, Natalie Kenley, is defending him. "He's not a monster," Kenley told People magazine. "He's a good man, and I feel very fortunate to have spent the time with him that I did. I'm so sad to hear of his health troubles."
He is not a monster. He's a good man, and I feel very fortunate to have spent the time with him that I did. I'm so sad to hear of his health troubles.
Olson was surprised by the reaction. "We should be together on this, like, Charlie, why didn't you tell?" she told Inside Edition. "That's all I want, for him to be a decent human being and to have let us know that this was going on."
We should be together on this of like, "Charlie, why didn't you tell? That's all I want. Just be a decent human being and to have let us know that this was going on."
What happens when your past refuses to stay buried? Bree Olson, once one of Charlie Sheen's goddesses, opens up about the lasting scars of her relationship with him and the harsh judgment she faces daily.
Like he was putting a gun to my head and pulling the trigger each time.
Bree Olson was one of Sheen's goddesses, became a porn star at the age of 19, and used to make between $30,000 and $60,000 a month. However, in a shocking confession, Bree claims that she's now treated like a pedophile around children. In a video for YouTube channel Real Women, Real Stories, the 29-year-old said, "The words are something I didn't expect to affect me in my everyday life. When I go out, I feel as if I'm wearing slut across my forehead. There are days to weeks at a time where I don't leave my house because I don't feel like facing the world that has been created out there for me. I get so disappointed when I go out and meet a new friend and it turns out that they don't want to be my friend anymore."
There are days to weeks at a time where I don't leave my house because I don't feel like facing the world of what has been created out there for me. I get so disappointed when I go out and I meet a new friend and then it turns out they don't want to be my friend anymore.
Olson added that her ex-sex worker status often means she's vilified, saying, "People treat me as if I'm a pedophile. They don't treat me like an ex-sex worker. They treat me like I would somehow be damaging to children."
People treat me as if I am a pedophile. They don't treat me like an ex-sex worker. They treat me like I would somehow be damaging to children.
The blonde broke down in tears in the clip before urging teenagers not to do porn. She said, "As much as I understand that you want to embrace your sexuality and say, screw the man, I can do what I want with my body, you're going to have to deal with a life of crap in front of you."
I send a very strong message to young girls, don't do porn, because as much I understand it, you want to embrace your sexuality, you want to say, screw the man, screw whatever, like, I can do what I want with my body.
I would never do to anyone what Charlie did to me, she said. That is giving someone a possible death sentence. I would never do that to someone. But she is now left in disbelief and says Sheen lied to her.
I would never do to anyone what Charlie did to me. That is giving someone a possible death sentence. I would never do that to someone, ever.
There is no one he could have trusted more to have confided this information to than to me, she said. Charlie Sheen's rep insists that the actor and ex-girlfriend Bree Olson were broken up by the time he learned he was HIV positive. But Olson isn't quite ready to let him off the hook. In yet another new interview following Sheen's November 17th Today Show appearance, the former adult film star told Inside Edition that she wants definitive proof that he didn't know about his status until after they split. It would give me peace of mind for Charlie to say a date, she told the site, calling his chat with Matt Lauer too wishy-washy.
Give me a peace of mind for Charlie to say a date. When I found out that I got this on this date because that interview was so wishy-washy.
As previously reported, Sheen told the Today anchor he tested positive 4 years ago in 2011. He and Olson split that spring, but his manager maintains that she wasn't in Charlie's life when he was HIV positive, and so there was no reason to tell her anything. She said she doesn't want to hear from him, but does have a message to give him. Charlie, you're a terrible person, she said. You're a terrible person. I will never forgive you. The fallout from Charlie Sheen's shocking revelation is far from over. 6 of his former sexual partners are now preparing lawsuits against the actor, accusing him of intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud, and sexual battery. Some claim they engaged in both protected and unprotected sex with Sheen as recently as a few weeks ago, without any knowledge of his HIV status. According to a source close to the situation, one individual had sexual contact with Sheen just days before his public announcement, while another claims their encounter occurred 3 weeks ago. These allegations, if proven true, could lead to serious legal consequences for Sheen. In the United States, individuals who are HIV positive and fail to disclose their status to sexual partners can face severe penalties, including lengthy prison sentences, registration as a sex offender, and even charges for possessing a biological weapon. As the legal storm brews, Sheen has expressed a desire to turn over a new leaf. In an open letter posted to the Today Show website, he stated, "I accept this condition not as a curse or scourge, but rather as an opportunity and a challenge. An opportunity to help others, a challenge to better myself." Whether Sheen's attempt at redemption will be enough to repair the damage done remains to be seen. What's clear is that the repercussions of his actions will echo far beyond Hollywood, forcing tough conversations about trust, responsibility, and the stigma that still surrounds HIV. Thanks for tuning in. If this story had you hooked, don't miss our other deep dives into Hollywood's biggest scandals. Hit subscribe, tap that notification bell, and keep exploring the secrets behind the stars. See you next time.